Laundromat's empty, it must be my lucky day. It's about time I said goodbye to this crud. Who is it? Who is it? Who is it? Whispering in my head. The greedy voice is begging me for more. See, I want to be satisfied. Doing the bare minimum. Okay, that's enough for that. Hi, everybody. Oh, wow, my glasses are dirty. Welcome back. Let's talk about disturbing movies for a little while. I think that in every horror movie junkie's life, we hit this point where things start to get a little stale. It's kind of like when you love spicy stuff so much that you eat it all the time, but then after a while, you want to try Carolina Reaper because hot sauce just ain't doing it for you no more. That is the road that I think we all go down eventually. And personally, I feel it's the best way to discover if you could have become a serial killer if your circumstances in life were different. Like, for example, once upon a time, I really genuinely thought that I was one bad day away from collecting bodies in my basement. Like, that was a real fear in the back of my mind for a lot of my life. And it even got worse when I started writing horror novels, exclusively. Thankfully, though, that fear was shaken when I jumped on the fucked up horror movie path because I discovered through that there are some things that even I can't handle. See, because it's important to find your limit when it comes to horror. Honestly, because I don't think you can truly know how deep your desensitization goes until you hit that one movie that manages to break you. For those of you that are just now entering that wonderful stage of your horror movie watching life, allow me to impart a few words of wisdom upon you in this video, before you get too far into your journey. But first, as always, let's talk a little disturbing movie history, shall we? Yes, there is history. A very little bit this time. I'm nothing if I'm not a historian at heart. I've always sort of felt like in horror, there is this unwritten rule that whatever has been done can, will, and should be expanded upon. Like, for instance, in my last video, we talked a little bit about the special effects in Nosferatu and how they were so innovative in the original movie and how they did some of those things again and expanded upon them in the new remake. I mean, when you look at the creature design of Count Orlok from the first Nosferatu to every other Nosferatu monster that has come after, you can see they get more and more gruesome and more terrifying. And if we're talking monster movies, every single one has kind of followed that trend. Like werewolf movies in particular, if you look at the original Wolfman with Lon Chaney and the morphing special effects, those were considered cutting edge for that day. But if you compare that to, say, The Howling, and then The Howling to American Werewolf in London, and then that to, say, the Wolfman remake in 2010, I believe, you can see that there's a clear evolution going on between special effects there. It's literally like they're trying to one up the next generation. And in that vein, the evolution in horror doesn't just stop there. Filmmakers have been getting more and more bold and creative since the beginning of this whole thing. Like, stories are becoming more and more inventive, for one thing. And while most of the mainstream horror stays on the edge, within the what's cool with the MPAA, there are filmmakers out there who really could give a damn. Like Gaspar Noir, who we'll talk about a little bit later, he's actually been quoted as saying more or less that he could give a damn. But the point is that the boundary line has always been moved and shifted and adjusted as times go on. In horror, there really are only two types of filmmakers. There are filmmakers that kind of go with the grain of what's scary for mainstream audiences, and then there are filmmakers who are trying to create something more than just a two-dimensional experience. One of my favorite fun facts about this subject in particular is how through the ages, filmmakers have been using gimmicks in horror to mess with the audience. Like the most famous of them that I can think of offhand, like this old school, is probably William Castle. Now, William Castle was the kind of filmmaker that really wanted you to feel like you were in a haunted house when you were watching one of his movies. He notoriously had all of these gimmicks that went along with the movies. For one movie, he had a floating skeleton that would come down on a wire during a certain part in the film. For another, I think one called, I think for The Tingler he had chairs that actually vibrated. He even had offered a refund for one of his movies if you couldn't hang past the first 45 minutes of it, which I don't know if that would get me out of there, but it would definitely get me through the door. I think, though, the most famous of his gimmicks is probably in 13 Ghosts. With 13 Ghosts, you know the remake. Everyone's seen the remake and everything. One of the cool callbacks that the remake has are the use of the glasses. In the original production, William Castle had these viewers. They weren't really 3D glasses per se. They were kind of red-green filters. And at certain points during the film, you could actually see the ghosts, or you couldn't see the ghosts. You could make them disappear and go away. And all that's really cool. Like you probably hearing all this and you're like, wow, I wish people would still do stuff like that in today's movies. Well, they still kind of do. They're just a little more subtle and creative in a lot of ways because we're a little more jaded as a society, as it were. Speaking of jaded, Gaspar Noé is a filmmaker who's done a bunch of really out there movies. I think the most famous one that you guys might recognize is Climax, which if you haven't seen it, it's a pretty cool movie filmmaker wise. Like if you're like me and you like to see movies that are put together in a certain way that you know, like in a behind the scenes kind of way that's kind of cool. Yeah, it's a pretty awesome movie. It's not really a movie for a casual horror movie watcher, but like I said earlier, Gaspar Noé could give a fuck about your opinion. In any event, he has this one movie that's called Irreversible that is, well, it's a hard movie to watch for a lot of reasons. One, it is a movie that is completely done in reverse. Now, you can find a version of this film that is in the other direction, the way it's supposed to be in chronological order. But when it was initially released, it was done in reverse. And it is a story about, well, a woman being sexually assaulted, which is awful. Is awful. The scene itself is among one of the more graphic sexual assault scenes that I have seen in recent memory in a horror film. Anyway, Irreversible is uncomfortable for a subject matter, but also in its original screening, he had music playing that had a particular note in it that was designed to make the audience uncomfortable. And when I say uncomfortable, I mean physically uncomfortable. Like it's a sound that was used to disperse crowds, okay, that are during civil unrest that the police used. The frequency resonated so that it actually was not good for your nervous system. It usually promoted nausea. So, yeah. Apparently it worked too. When the movie premiered at Sundance, a few people walked out complaining of nausea. And that does seem kind of counterproductive, but it was, in Noé's views, it was the point. Because it's a disturbing story and you should be disturbed. I think the movie also got some bad reviews because of that, but again, Gaspar Noé could give a fuck. So, okay, all these gimmicks, these in-theater gimmicks are great, but as you all know, as time went on, the theater movie watching experience kind of died away. And in the horror movie world, That meant that the filmmakers that were making new movies were going to have to get more inventive to get under your skin through the screen. Honestly, you can only do so much to wig a person out when they're sitting on their couch in their living room with the lights on watching a movie. But a lot of filmmakers saw that challenge and took it and created some of the most disturbing films that have ever existed. Now, there is a list of these movies. It popped up on Reddit a number of years ago. It's called the Disturbing Movie Iceberg List. Somebody created it before. I don't know if it's been updated since the first time it was created, but the concept is that the movie goes from least disturbing to most disturbing with a picture of an iceberg. Everything below the waterline gets worse and worse and worse and worse. Now, I'm willing to bet that some of you were kind of vaguely aware of the list, or maybe saw the list and thought to yourself, oh my God, there's something worse out there than Nightmare on Elm Street. And then there are others of you who saw that list and thought, ha, hold my beer. And listen, no tea or shade to whichever side of the coin that you are on. I mean, when it comes to horror movie tolerance, I've tried to carry the policy that we listen and we don't judge. Or at least try not to judge. Like, I know there are some of you that grew up in really good homes, really good parents who were very diligent about the things that you watched. And honestly, good for you. Can't relate personally, but I'm happy for you. Actually, I'm a little jealous. Now, if you were watching horror movies for a while and you were feeling that sense of horror movie ennui, and you were looking for something to scar you and you happened to come across this list, lucky you. I, in my personal journey, was not that lucky. Let me tell you the story of my boundary movie. The movie that made me say, okay, this is my line. I must never cross it. Stay with me here. This is a good story. So once upon a time, I was there. I was in that. I've seen all of these horror movies and none of them are doing it for me anymore. I'm kind of looking to be scarred. What is out there? And this was a while ago. I want to say maybe close to 15-ish years ago, maybe a little longer. I know that my oldest daughter was an adult at this point. And that's important for this story. So I'm looking around for a movie that's going to scar me. And just like if you ask around if somebody's holding, you will get supplied. A friend of my daughter heard about my plight and gifted her a burned copy of this movie. Now, side note, I have never named this movie publicly. Publicly, I refer to this film as the movie that shall never be named, as I have no intention of ever saying what this movie is. And the reason for that is actually pretty simple. Whenever I talked about this movie, whenever I described this movie to somebody, their immediate reaction is to go watch this movie. And see, here's the thing. This is the first time I had ever watched a movie that I wanted to warn people about. I was not talking about it to talk it up, okay? I was literally telling people, listen, this is not an endorsement. Do not watch this movie. It will mess you up. And I swear to you, I don't know what it is about saying, hey, don't watch this movie that makes a person goes, I think I'm going to go watch this movie. But it happened every single time. I even had a friend who got a hold of the copy and decided to spring it on a date, like a little Netflix and chill type thing. I don't know why. For kicks. And according to her, he got up during the middle of this movie, took it out of the DVD and threw it across the room. So please understand that when I say that I do not want to name this movie, I am not trying to gatekeep it. I'm not trying to foster any kind of curiosity. It's just that I know that you twisted little fucks out there are going to want to watch the movie. And then you're going to come back and blame me about it. And we are not having that. You guys, you scar yourselves in your own time. Thank you very much. Back to the Iceberg List. So, the Iceberg List, you can probably find it on Reddit. And that being said, if you're brave enough to watch anything below the waterline, well, here is the part of the video where I give you a few pointers. Number 1, do a test strip. Just like if you were dyeing your hair for the first time or narrowing yourself for the first time, do a test strip. That is to say, do your nervous system a favor and choose a movie that is above the waterline, just a tier above. Like the movies that are all a tier above are plenty disturbing on their own. And if any one of those messes you up, you have found your boundary. Do not go behind it. Do not dance with the devil. Do not cross go. Do not collect $200. Number two, and this relates to what I just said about my experience, understand that talking about the movie that you've just seen to other people will entice them to watch it too. No matter what you say, no matter how you warn them, they're going to want to watch it too. And when they do, they will more than likely come back to you like you made the movie. And somehow you should be locked up for that. And finally, number three, have an understanding that anything that you have watched that is really going to mess you up, there's something out there worse. There's always something out there worse. I don't care what the thing is that you just watched. There is something out there that is much, much, much worse. There was this guy that I used to follow on TikTok. I don't know if he has a YouTube account anymore. He used to, but somebody hacked into it and stole it from him. It was a whole thing. Anyway, his whole channel though was about explaining disturbing movies. The goal being to dissuade you from watching the movies, to kind of take away the curiosity. Now, I can't speak to how effective that was for his viewers, but I can say this much. The movies that he would describe were things that I can't even really fully imagine in my mind. And I have a big imagination. I write horror novels, but there are a few that he talked about that would put you on a watch list if you just look it up. That's not exaggeration. These are these are movies that would literally put you on a watch list. All that to say is that there are horror movies out there that would make the most hardened of us crumble like a cookie. And please take that advice from a jaded 50-year-old. And like I said, coming from me, that's saying a lot. But your journey into horror movie watching, try to hold on to the fact that you're doing this for fun is the most important thing. The minute that you're not having fun anymore, yeah, that being said, watch responsibly. Like, disturbing movies should be handled with care. They should not be taken lightly. For the record, I think it should be said that I do not believe that any of these movies should not exist. Honestly, regardless of how messed up they are, I do support the existence of all horror movies. Just because the genre is the most real representation of humanity that you could possibly find in one genre. And the reality is, we're a lot of things. We are good, and we are wonderful and sweet and romantic, but we are also really, really, really fucked up. Like, there are parts of our society that could really use psychiatric help. And to that, I don't believe that any horror movie should be censored or should be erased from existence, because to do so would be censoring the darkness of our humanity. And how would we ever know it was light if we didn't have the darkness? So yeah, have fun watching your disturbing horror movies, but just remember, they might screw you up pretty badly. As always, please share your thoughts, feelings, concerns, well wishes, your favorite color, whatever, in the comments. But honestly, I would love to read your opinions on this particular subject. So yeah, right away. And don't forget to subscribe as well. On that note, bye.